I watched a daughter evict her 90-year-old father, stealing his home and life savings through forged documents. She stood arrogant in court, believing she'd walk free. But I uncover every lie, exposing fraud, elder abuse, and manipulation. The verdict? 6 months in jail, criminal charges filed, and everything returned to the father. I witnessed entitlement crumble and justice deliver the most satisfying punishment I've seen today. The moment they walked into my courtroom, I knew this case would haunt me. I've seen thousands of family disputes in my 30 years on the bench, but something about the trembling hands of the 90-year-old man clutching a worn manila envelope made my chest tighten. His daughter stood beside him, or rather against him, arms crossed, chin tilted upward in that particular brand of arrogance I've learned to recognize instantly. No remorse, no shame, just entitlement wrapped in expensive clothing. I noticed the faint bruise on his cheekbone first, still fresh, probably from this morning. My eyes moved to her manicured nails, tapping impatiently against her designer handbag. The contrast hit me like a slap. Him in a threadbare cardigan that had seen better decades, her dripping in jewelry that could pay his rent for a year. "State your case," I said, keeping my voice level though fury already simmered beneath. The daughter spoke first, of course she did. "Your Honor, I'm here because my father is being unreasonable about a property matter we've already resolved." Already resolved. I let that phrase hang in the air, watching the father's shoulders collapse inward. That's when I heard the sharp intake of breath from the gallery. Someone had seen what I saw. This wasn't a dispute. This was cruelty dressed as concern. "Mr. Thompson," I turned to him deliberately, softening my tone in a way I reserve for victims who've forgotten they have a voice. "Tell me why you're in my courtroom today." His lips trembled. She changed the locks while I was in the hospital, Your Honor. I came home from surgery and my key didn't work. My clothes were on the lawn. 60 years in that house and I couldn't get in. The daughter rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes. I caught it, stored it in that mental file I keep for moments when people show me exactly who they are. I leaned forward, fingers interlaced, and fixed her with the look that has made grown men confess. "We're going to start from the very beginning, and this time I want the truth." I turned my full attention to Mr. Thompson, deliberately shutting out the daughter's presence. In my experience, victims need to feel seen before they can speak truth. "Sir," I said, my voice losing its courtroom edge, "tell me about your home." His weathered hands steadied on the envelope. "I built that house in 1962, Your Honor. Laid every brick myself on weekends while working full-time at the post office." His eyes lifted, and I saw something the daughter had missed: clarity. Sharp, unmistakable clarity. This man wasn't senile. He was broken. 40 years I worked that route, he continued. Rain, snow, 100-degree summers. My wife Helen and I saved every penny. That house was our dream. He paused, swallowing hard. "She died 6 months ago. Cancer." I watched his fingers trace the envelope's edge, a gesture so tender it spoke of rituals, maybe how he used to hold his wife's hand. The courtroom went silent, that particular stillness when strangers witness private grief. Within a week of the funeral, my daughter moved in, said she wanted to help, that I shouldn't be alone. I was grateful. He stopped, shame flooding his features. I thought she loved me. That phrase hit me harder than expected. 30 years on this bench, and that sentence still cuts through my armor. She convinced me to add her name to the deed. "For estate planning," she said. I trusted her. He looked at his daughter, and I saw something die in his eyes, the last fragment of hope that she might explain it away. 3 weeks later, I went in for gallbladder surgery. When I came home, my key didn't fit. I leaned forward. "What did you find?" "My furniture, my clothes, Helen's belongings, everything piled on the lawn like garbage." His voice cracked. Neighbors were watching. People I'd known for 60 years, watching me stand there with nowhere to go. I felt my jaw tighten. The daughter shifted uncomfortably, finally sensing the room turning against her. "Where have you been living, Mr. Thompson?" He met my eyes. "In my car, Your Honor. 3 weeks now." I let the weight of those words settle over the courtroom in my car before turning to the daughter. I've learned that silence is often more powerful than any question I could ask. Let them sit in their own guilt. See if they squirm. She didn't squirm. That's what bothered me most. "Your turn," I said, each word sharp as a scalpel. Explain to me why your 90-year-old father has been sleeping in his car for 3 weeks. She straightened her designer jacket, composing her face into something resembling concern. I recognized the performance immediately. I've seen it 1,000 times. The rehearsed empathy, the practiced explanations. Your Honor, I understand how this looks, but you have to understand my father isn't well. Her voice carried that particular tone people use when they're about to gaslight someone. He's been forgetting things, leaving the stove on, missing his medications. I was terrified he'd hurt himself. I leaned back, letting her talk, give them rope, my old mentor used to say. I had no choice but to take control of the situation for his own safety. She gestured toward him as though he were a child. The house was falling apart. Mold, electrical issues. It wasn't safe for someone his age. So you locked him out? I interjected. I was protecting him, she insisted, voice rising slightly. I was preparing the house for sale so I could move him somewhere with proper care, somewhere he'd be safe and monitored. I picked up a document from my desk, the one I'd been waiting to use. You mentioned medical concerns. You have documentation of these memory issues? Yes. She relaxed slightly, reaching for her folder. I have a doctor's note right here stating he shows signs of cognitive decline. I examined the paper she handed me. This is dated 3 weeks ago, from a Dr. Patterson. I looked up. Is Dr. Patterson your father's regular physician? Her pause told me everything. Well, no. My father refused to see his regular doctor. So I took him to your doctor. I finished. The one who's never treated him before wrote this assessment. How convenient. The daughter's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. Too quickly. That's another. Tell people who've rehearsed their lies, don't stumble when caught. They pivot. Your Honor, the important thing is that he was evaluated, and the professional opinion confirmed my concerns. I set down the doctor's note and picked up the next document. This one mattered more. Let's talk about the property deed. The shift in her expression was subtle, but I caught it. A flicker of anxiety breaking through the confidence. Good. She should be worried. Bailiff, hand me Exhibit B. The deed transfer document landed on my bench with a soft thud that felt heavier than it should. I've reviewed thousands of legal documents in my career. I know what legitimate signatures look like. I know what forgery looks like. This was forgery. I held up the paper, studying the signature under the courtroom lights. Mr. Thompson, is this your signature? He leaned forward, squinting. His hand trembled as he reached for his reading glasses. The silence stretched thin while he examined it. I watched the daughter's jaw clench. No, Your Honor, he said finally, voice steady. That's not how I signed my name. The T is wrong, and I always loop the P in Thompson. This looks like someone tried to copy it. I nodded, already knowing what he'd say. I pulled out his driver's license standard practice for identity verification. Let me compare this to your license signature. I held them side by side, angling them so the gallery could see on the overhead screen. The difference was obvious. The pressure points were wrong, the slant inconsistent, the letter formation clumsy. Miss Thompson, I said, using her last name deliberately, removing any familial warmth. This document is dated March 15th. Can you tell me where your father was on March 15th? She hesitated. That hesitation told me she knew exactly where this was going. I believe he was in surgery, I interrupted, holding up hospital records, under general anesthesia. So tell me, how did he sign this deed? The silence that followed my question was deafening. I've learned that guilty people fill silence with excuses, but the truly cornered ones freeze. The daughter froze. The notary must have made an error on the date, she stammered, but her voice had lost its earlier certainty. The notary. I let that word hang there. We'll come back to that. I reached for the next folder, the one I'd been building towards since the moment I reviewed this case file last night. The financial records. Let's talk about money, Miss Thompson. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside her. He knew what was coming. They always know. I spread the bank statements across my bench like a prosecutor laying out evidence at a crime scene. These are your father's bank records for the past 4 months, March through June. I traced my finger down the first page. On March 20th, 5 days after the alleged deed signing, there's a withdrawal. $2,000. The father leaned forward, confusion crossing his face. He was seeing these numbers for the first time. March 27th, another withdrawal, 3,500. I continued, my voice methodical, building the pattern. April 3rd, $8,000. April 15th, 6,000. April 29th, 12,000. I looked up. Shall I continue, or do you see where this is going? The gallery murmured. I silenced them with a raised hand, never taking my eyes off the daughter. Your Honor, those were legitimate expenses for what? I interrupted sharply. Because I have the receipts right here for your March trip to Miami. First-class flights, 5-star hotel. The charges match these withdrawal dates almost perfectly. I pulled out printed screenshots of her social media Instagram posts showing her on a beach holding expensive cocktails, the dates stamped clearly in the corner, while your father was recovering from surgery, sleeping in hospital beds. You were posting vacation photos. Her face drained of color. The total, Mr. Thompson, I turned to him gently, comes to $47,000 in 4 months. Did you authorize any of these withdrawals? His voice was barely a whisper. No, Your Honor. I didn't even know. I watched the realization wash over Mr. Thompson's face, the kind of dawning horror that comes when betrayal becomes quantifiable. $47,000, a lifetime of savings, drained in 4 months. But I wasn't finished. Financial theft was only part of this story. Mr. Thompson, I said, softening my voice, what finally brought you to my courtroom? What was the breaking point? He took a shaky breath. 2 weeks ago, I went back to the house. I needed to get some things. My wife's wedding ring, our photo albums, my father's military medals from World War II. His voice cracked. They're all I have left of them. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. I knocked on my own door. The absurdity wasn't lost on anyone. She wouldn't let me in, said I was trespassing. I tried to explain. I just wanted Helen's ring. Just that one thing. The daughter's jaw tightened. Then she called the police. His hands trembled. Officers, Martinez and Chen. I've known them since they were kids, delivering newspapers on my route. They had to escort me off my own property while the neighbors watched. I felt my chest tighten. In 30 years on this bench, certain stories still break through my professional armor. The officers apologized, he continued, voice barely above a whisper. They knew it was wrong, but legally, with her name on the deed, he trailed off. I turned to the daughter slowly, deliberately. You had your own father arrested, a 90-year-old man asking for his dead wife's wedding ring. She lifted her chin defensively. He was being aggressive. I felt threatened. I held up the police report. Officer Martinez wrote here, and I quote, Mr. Thompson was calm and respectful throughout. He simply requested personal items. No aggressive behavior observed. Her lawyer touched her arm, warning her to stop talking. Too late. The damage was done. I'd seen enough. The daughter had just lied under oath. I let that sink in, watching her lawyer's shoulders sag. He knew what I knew. This case was beyond a civil dispute. We were in criminal territory now. I reached for the folder marked forensic analysis. I requested a handwriting expert review every document, and what they found was damning. Let's talk about forgery, I said, keeping my tone clinical. When dealing with criminals, emotion is less effective than cold facts. I held up 2 documents side by side. On the left, the property deed allegedly signed by Mr. Thompson on March 15th. On the right, his passport signature from 6 months ago. I angled them toward the camera. Notice anything different? The daughter shifted. Her lawyer remained motionless, already defeated. The handwriting expert's report is detailed. I continued. The pressure applied to the pen? Wrong. The angle? Wrong. The capital T formation? Wrong. Even the lowercase p, Mr. Thompson always makes a distinctive loop. This signature? No loop. I looked directly at her. Someone tried to copy your father's signature. Someone who had access to examples but didn't capture the muscle memory, the natural flow. Her face had gone pale, all that confidence evaporating. But here's what really interests me, I said, pulling out another document. This power of attorney form, also allegedly signed by your father. Same forged signature. I paused for effect. Same pressure points. Same errors. Same missing loop. The courtroom was silent, except for the air conditioning's hum. The notary seal on both documents, I held them up. The state licensing board confirms no notary by that name exists in this county. The seal number, fake. Whoever forged your father's signature also fabricated official state documentation. I set the papers down carefully. That's not just fraud, Miss Thompson. That's a felony. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I'd seen that look before. It's the moment when people realize their entire house of lies is collapsing and there's no foundation left to stand on. I wasn't done, not even close. Forgery and financial exploitation were bad enough, but what I found next made my blood run cold. I've been doing this long enough to recognize when someone has a complete plan, not just opportunistic theft. Let's discuss your plans for your father's future, I said, reaching for yet another folder. The daughter's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected this. I pulled out a glossy brochure, Pine Haven Memory Care Facility, a locked unit specializing in advanced dementia patients. I let that word hang locked. You submitted an application for your father here on April 2nd. Mr. Thompson's head snapped up. This was news to him. The facility director was kind enough to provide me with your intake forms. I flipped through the pages, reading aloud. Under patient condition, you wrote, and I quote, severe cognitive decline, confusion, wandering behavior, requires 2 4-hour supervision and secure environment. I looked at Mr. Thompson, who sat there solving a crossword puzzle he'd brought to court. Sharp as ever. The deposit you paid was $15,000 from his account, naturally. I paused, but here's what disturbs me most. You specifically inquired about rooms with no outside access, no windows that open, no independent exit privileges. The gallery stirred. Even they understood what I was describing: a prison, not a care facility. You were planning to lock him away? I said quietly, my voice harder than steel. A healthy, competent, 90-year-old man with no cognitive impairment. You were going to commit him to a secure dementia unit based on false medical claims. The daughter finally found her voice. I was preparing for the inevitable. The inevitable? I cut her off. Your father is sitting here filing lawsuits, keeping track of financial records, remembering dates and details better than half the people in this courtroom. There's nothing inevitable about his mental state except that you wanted people to think there was. I held up the facility paperwork. This wasn't care, Miss Thompson. This was elimination. You were going to erase your father from existence while keeping his house and his money. Her face crumbled. Finally, the mask was completely gone. I've witnessed many breakdowns in my courtroom. Some are calculated performances designed to garner sympathy. Others are genuine collapses when reality penetrates denial. This was the latter. The daughter's carefully constructed facade shattered like dropped glass. Her shoulders shook, mascara beginning to streak, but I felt no sympathy. Tears don't erase crimes. Your Honor, you don't understand, she started, voice rising with desperation. Then explain it to me. I leaned back, arms crossed. Explain how stealing $47,000 is understandable. Explain how forging documents is justified. Explain how planning to lock a competent man in a dementia facility makes sense. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The words wouldn't come because there were no words that could make this right. I was just trying to protect the family assets. She finally stammered. Everything was falling apart. The house needed repairs. He wasn't managing his money properly. I had to take control before he lost everything. There it was. The word that always appears in these cases, control. Before he lost everything? I repeated slowly. Or before you couldn't inherit it? Her face flushed red. I didn't mean. You said it yourself earlier, Miss Thompson. You called it your inheritance, while he's still alive, still competent, still entitled to live in his own home and spend his own money however he sees fit. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. Do you know what I see? I continued, my voice dropping to that particular tone that makes people lean forward. I see a daughter who couldn't wait, who looked at her aging father and saw a bank account instead of a human being. She was crying openly now, but whether from shame or self-pity, I couldn't tell. I sacrificed everything for him growing up. she suddenly shouted, composure completely gone. I gave up my 20s taking care of him and Mom. I deserve something. And there it was, the entitlement at the core of it all, finally exposed for everyone to hear. Her outburst hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. I let it linger, let everyone absorb what she just admitted. Sometimes the best response is silence, let their own words condemn them. I took a breath and reached for my legal pad, where I'd been cataloging every violation throughout this hearing. Time to lay it all out, piece by damning piece. Let me summarize what we've established here today, I said, my voice returning to that methodical prosecutor tone, because I want to make sure everyone understands the full scope of what happened to Mr. Thompson. I ticked off each item on my fingers. A gesture I've found makes the list feel more concrete, more real. 1. Forged signature on a property deed transfer, committed while your father was under anesthesia. 2. Forged signature on a power of attorney document giving you control over his medical and financial decisions. 3. Fabricated notary seals on both documents, a separate felony for each. The daughter had stopped crying, now just staring at the floor. 4. Unauthorized withdrawal of $47,000 over 4 months. 5. Conversion of personal property, selling his belongings without permission. 6. Filing a false police report claiming he was trespassing at his own home. I paused, making sure she was listening. She was. 7. Submitting fraudulent medical documentation to a memory care facility. 8. Attempting to commit a competent adult to a locked psychiatric facility under false pretenses. 9. Elder abuse through financial exploitation. 10. Elder abuse through emotional manipulation and isolation. I set down the pad and looked directly at her. 10 separate violations, some civil, most criminal. Each one a calculated decision to harm your own father for financial gain. Mr. Thompson sat motionless, hearing the full extent of his daughter's betrayal cataloged like evidence in a murder trial, which, in a way, it was she tried to murder his independence, his dignity, his very existence. Do you have anything to say? I asked the daughter, though I already knew there was nothing she could say that would matter. She shook her head slowly, defeated. Then I'm ready to rule. The courtroom held its breath. I removed my glasses, a deliberate gesture I've perfected over decades. It signals to everyone that the time for argument has passed. Now comes judgment. The weight of this moment never gets lighter, no matter how many times I've sat in this chair. Lives change with my words. Miss Thompson, I began, my voice carrying that particular tone of finality. In 30 years on this bench, I have seen greed take many forms. But what you've done represents a special kind of betrayal that goes beyond simple theft. She looked up at me, eyes red, face pale. You didn't just steal his money. You didn't just forge his signature. You didn't just lock him out of his own home. I paused, letting each accusation land. You tried to erase him, to make him disappear so completely that no one would question where he went. The gallery was utterly silent. I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. My gavel hand was already raised. The property deed is hereby declared void due to forgery. The house belongs to Mr. Thompson, as it always has. You will vacate within 48 hours. Her lawyer started to object, but I silenced him with a look. You will return every single dollar, $47,000 plus interest, calculated at the statutory rate. You will also return or compensate him for every item you sold, his wife's wedding ring, his father's military medals, every piece of furniture. I watched her face crumble with each demand. All legal fees, his and yours, you will pay. Consider it the cost of your choices. Then I leaned forward for the part that would really hurt. But that's just the civil side, Miss Thompson. I held up the criminal referral form I'd already filled out. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Charges include elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and attempted false imprisonment. Her legs buckled. The bailiff moved closer. Each count carries up to 6 months in county jail. That's potentially years if they pursue everything. Justice, finally, had teeth. The bailiff stepped forward as the daughter swayed, but she steadied herself against the table. Some part of her pride perhaps refused to let her collapse completely. I watched Mr. Thompson. He hadn't moved during my entire ruling, hadn't shown triumph or satisfaction, just quiet, devastating sadness. Even now, he was mourning the daughter he thought he had. Mr. Thompson, I said, softening my voice, you'll be back in your home tonight. The locks will be changed by this afternoon. Your belongings will be returned. Your money will be restored. He nodded slowly, eyes distant. Victory, I've learned, doesn't always feel victorious when it comes at the cost of family. The daughter finally found her voice, broken and small. Dad, I'm sorry. I never meant. Don't, Mr. Thompson's word cut like a blade. It was the first time I'd heard real steel in his voice. He turned to look at her. You looked at me and saw dollar signs. You looked at your mother's memory and saw inconvenient sentiment. You looked at 60 years of my life and saw an obstacle. His voice didn't rise, didn't shake. That made it more powerful. I would have given you anything if you just asked, if you just loved me. He stood slowly, gathering what remained of his dignity. But you couldn't wait for me to die naturally. You tried to bury me while I was still breathing. The daughter's face crumbled, but he wasn't finished. I raised you better than this. Your mother and I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities we never had. And this, he gestured at the courtroom, at the evidence scattered across my bench. This is what you chose. I've presided over thousands of cases, but some moments transcend law and become simply human. This was one of them. Court is adjourned, I said quietly, bringing my gavel down with finality that echoed like a closing door. Mr. Thompson walked out with his head high. His daughter was escorted out in tears. And I sat there, thinking about how the saddest victories are the ones where nobody really wins. Greed destroys families, but justice restores dignity. If you believe children who exploit their parents deserve consequences, hit that subscribe button. We expose these courtroom battles where entitlement meets accountability. Drop a comment. Should the daughter have gotten more jail time? Your voice matters here.